The chandelier sparkled above like a crown made of crystal, casting its glow over the polished floor and manicured guests. Champagne glasses clinked. Laughter rose in waves, too loud, too forced. The room pulsed with celebration, but Jasmine felt like a ghost seated at the center. She sat straight, her dress flawless, her smile practiced. But no one toasted to her. No one raised a glass in her direction. She was the only one sitting in silence, invisible at her own family celebration. To her right, Aunt Sylvia giggled too hard at a joke no one else found funny. To her left, her cousin whispered behind a manicured hand, eyes flicking toward Jasmine, then away. It wasn't the first time. Jasmine had grown used to this kind of stage one where she was present but not welcome. One where her presence made others squirm, but no one asked why. She glanced down at her untouched glass. The bubbles had long gone flat, just like their affection. She was surrounded by people who shared her blood, but none of them shared her heart. And then it happened. The room quieted for just a moment, and in that moment, Jasmine's mother tilted her head, looked her daughter dead in the eyes, and said, "No man would ever want to stay with her." Not in a whisper, not behind closed doors. She said it loud enough for the entire family to hear. Her words cracked the air like a slap, cold, sharp, designed to sting. There were no gasps, only silence followed by a slow, hollow laugh from Jasmine's father. He leaned back in his chair, amused. "Guess we all knew that," he muttered, smirking. One by one, the family joined in. An aunt shook her head. A cousin snorted. Another uncle chuckled under his breath. It felt like a courtroom, but Jasmine had no lawyer, no defense. Only 1,000 eyes and a verdict already decided. She sat still, nails digging into her palm beneath the tablecloth. She wouldn't give them what they wanted, a tear, a tremble, a breakdown. She gave them silence. But inside, her heart clenched like a fist made of fire. Jasmine didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't beg. She simply looked around the room, locked eyes with her mother, and said, clearly, "Well, see." Her voice was calm, too calm. It wasn't defiance, it was certainty. And that made them nervous. Her father scoffed. An aunt raised an eyebrow. But Jasmine had already pushed her chair back, slow, deliberate. She stood tall, her heels clicked against the marble floor like a countdown. 1, 2, 3 steps. "Where do you think you're going?" her father's voice chased after her, mocking. She didn't turn back. She just said, "Somewhere you'll wish I hadn't." Then the door slammed shut, and the laughter behind her. It didn't matter, because the storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. The road was empty, but Jasmine's mind was anything but. Her hands gripped that steering wheel so tightly the leather dug into her skin. The night swallowed the highway. Streetlights passed like ghosts, blinking in and out of existence. She didn't cry. She couldn't. The rage burned too hot for tears. Her jaw clenched. Her breath came shallow. Her eyes locked forward. And still the voices echoed. No man would want her. She's too much. Let's cancel her part, it's embarrassing. Each memory hit like a pothole in the road. Sudden, jarring, brutal, birthdays forgotten, achievements ignored. Tears behind closed doors that no one ever asked about. They had humiliated her in front of everyone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that they enjoyed it. And now they would learn what silence had been hiding. They thought he left her, that he'd packed his bags the minute things got hard, that Jasmine had been abandoned again. But they didn't know about him. Not the real him. Not the man who sat in boardrooms while they sat around gossiping. Not the man who read contracts like chess moves 3 steps ahead. Always quiet, always precise. They didn't know he had power. They didn't know he had plans. While they whispered about Jasmine's failure, he had been quietly collecting signatures, merging companies, acquiring stakes, buying out names, their names. They didn't know he had built an empire behind the curtain they never bothered to look behind, and they definitely didn't know he was hers. Jasmine's fingers loosened around the wheel. She could feel it now, the shift, the power returning. Tomorrow, she whispered to the windshield, they won't just regret their words. They'll regret ever underestimating me. The door opened. Not slammed, not kicked, just opened. But it felt like thunder. Every head turned, every mouth froze mid-sentence. And there he was, Jasmine's husband, the man they had erased from every conversation. The man they assumed had disappeared, defeated, humiliated. He walked in calm, composed, dangerous. Not a wrinkle in his tailored suit, not a drop of doubt in his eyes. In one hand, a leather folder thick with papers. In the other, silence. A silence so sharp it cut through every smirk in the room. No one moved. No one dared speak. Because in that moment they knew. He wasn't here to smile. He was here to end something, and it wouldn't be her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He walked to the center of the room, laid the thick folder on the polished table, and opened it slowly. "Good morning," he said. "I believe there's something you should know." He pulled out page after page. Signatures, contracts, mergers, buyouts. Familiar names were printed across the top. Uncle Raymond, Aunt Sylvia, even Jasmine's own father. All signed, all legal. Every deal you've signed in the last 6 months. Every partnership you thought was under your control. He looked around the room. Was funneled through holding companies I own. He paused. Which means you don't own your companies anymore. You don't run your projects. He stared directly at Jasmine's father. "Work for me now." The room erupted in gasps. A cousin dropped her glass. Aunt Sylvia covered her mouth. Even the house itself seemed to shrink under the weight of the words. The man they mocked now owned them. And then she walked in. Jasmine. Not the broken girl they thought they crushed. Not the quiet one who swallowed her pain. Not the burden they laughed at last night. She stepped in beside her husband, head high, eyes sharp. The room froze. Her heels tapped against the marble like a countdown, but this time not to leave, this time to rise. She didn't smile, she didn't flinch. She just looked at them, each one. Eyes that used to drop when they saw her now couldn't look away. "The girl you laughed at," she said, "isn't standing alone anymore." Silence, not the awkward kind, the kind that tastes like shame, the kind that screams louder than any insult. And in that silence, she stood taller than ever. The silence shattered. Slam! Jasmine's father pounded the table so hard the coffee cups jumped. "Fake! This is fake!" he shouted. "None of this is real. You think you can trick me?" His hands trembled as he grabbed the documents, page after page, flipping faster and faster, desperate to find a lie, a loophole, anything. But all he found was himself, his signature on every page. Jasmine's husband stepped forward, calm, precise. He didn't yell, he didn't smirk. He simply tapped the paper with his finger and said, "Your signature, your mistake." The room was still, the kind of stillness that comes when a king realizes his throne is cracked. Just when the room thought it couldn't sink any lower, Jasmine stepped forward, her eyes steady, her movements deliberate. She pulled one final paper from her purse, folded, crisp, lethal. She laid it on the table next to the contracts. "This house is not yours anymore." Her mother's head snapped up. Her father froze. Jasmine looked at them without blinking. "You were too busy mocking me to notice the foreclosure notice on your front door." She paused. "I bought it outright. Every tile, every wall, every memory you thought you still controlled." The silence that followed wasn't just silence. It was collapse. Their collapse. It started with a whisper. Just one voice, soft but louder than any scream. "We've been silent for too long." Every head turned. It was her Aunt Clara, usually quiet, always polite, the kind who nodded and stayed out of family drama. But not today. She stood up slowly and looked straight at Jasmine. "You didn't deserve the way they treated you, and we all knew it." Gasps spread like fire, eyes darted, whispers stirred. Then another voice joined in, and another. Cousins, uncles, people who had watched from the sidelines for years. They weren't silent anymore. One by one, they stepped out of the shadows, and one by one, they stepped toward Jasmine. Jasmine turned to face them, her parents, the people who were supposed to protect her, love her, raise her to believe she mattered. But they hadn't, not once. She looked her father dead in the eyes, then her mother. "You didn't love me," she said, her voice razor sharp. "You managed me. You didn't guide me. You controlled me. You didn't nurture me. You silenced me." Her mother opened her mouth, but Jasmine didn't let her speak. "I'm not betraying family, I'm resisting poison." Gasps cut through the room, but Jasmine's voice was steady, solid. Years of pain finally had a voice. And it was hers. The room held its breath. And then a quiet voice cut through the tension. "Uncle, we were afraid of you." All eyes turned. It was Matthew, the quiet one, the cousin who never spoke up, the one who always kept his head down, his voice low, his opinions to himself. But not now. We were all afraid of you, of your temper, your manipulation, your power. He looked at Jasmine, but not anymore. Gas rippled again. Chairs shifted. Cousins exchanged glances. Guilt, shame, relief. The dam had cracked, and now the truth was flooding in. One by one they nodded. Some stood, some lowered their eyes. But none of them defended her parents, because now they couldn't. Her mother stood frozen, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched, eyes blinking too fast. And then it cracked. Her lips began to tremble. Her eyes welled up. Her voice wavered. "You've twisted everything? You don't understand what this is doing to us." The tears came. But they weren't the soft kind. They weren't sorrow. They were panic, the kind of crying that comes when control slips through your fingers, not when you feel guilt, but when you feel powerless. Jasmine watched. For years, her mother wore that mask of pride, perfection, icy poise. And now it was breaking, piece by piece. And the woman beneath, she didn't look strong. She looked terrified. Jasmine's husband stepped forward. No anger, no gloating, just certainty. He looked straight at her parents, his voice like steel. "The deed doesn't lie. You don't live here anymore." Her father opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Her mother blinked but said nothing. For the first time, they had no defense, no manipulation, no lecture, no empty threats, just silence and paper. Cold, unforgiving, final. Jasmine walked to the front door, slow, unshaken. Her heels echoed like a gavel across the floor. She opened it wide and then turned to face them. "Go," she said softly. "Find a place where laughter still hides your cruelty." Her words didn't scream. They didn't need to. They were sharp enough in silence. Her father didn't move. Her mother's lips parted, no sound came out. Then slowly they stepped forward, out the door, into a world that no longer bowed to them. No bags, no pride, just shadows wearing human skin. In the door, it didn't slam. It closed, firm, final. The door clicked shut, and for the first time the house was quiet. Not tense, not heavy, not full of eyes watching her breathe. Just quiet, peaceful. Jasmine stood still. She let the silence settle into her skin, into her chest, into the space that used to carry fear and now carried only breath. She hadn't won because she was richer, or louder, or stronger. She had won because she finally owned the one thing they tried to steal herself. Jasmine stepped forward, not to threaten, not to gloat, but to end it. Her voice was steady, clear, sharp as truth. "All my life," she said, "I was told I was a burden." She looked around the room, at the aunts who had laughed, the cousins who had turned away, the uncles who stayed silent. "But today you're the ones being canceled." No one responded. No one could, because in that moment, they weren't just looking at Jasmine. They were looking at themselves, and they didn't like what they saw. Jasmine's husband broke the silence, his voice calm, measured, final. "This isn't about revenge, it's about dignity." Jasmine turned to him and nodded slowly. Her eyes no longer burned with anger. They held something stronger, surer, and I found it, not through their approval, but through my awakening. The room didn't clap, it didn't cheer, but it shifted, because Jasmine hadn't come to destroy. She had come to remember who she was and remind everyone else they never got to define her. Jasmine paused at the doorway. She looked back not in regret, but in recognition. At the house that once held her in chains, a house filled with silence, shame, and survival. Now it was hers, and it breathed differently. It wasn't a prison anymore. It was a kingdom, built not on power but on truth. She exhaled free and whispered to herself, words meant for the walls to remember. "They'll remember me not as the difficult daughter, but as the woman who made them silent." Then she turned and walked forward, not just out of the house, but into her legacy. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are the ones inside our own homes. Jasmine's story reminds us that family should never be a place where love is used as control or silence mistaken for respect. You don't owe your peace to those who poison it. You owe yourself the freedom to heal, to rise, and to reclaim your voice. Dignity is not given. It's taken back one boundary, one brave step, one no more at a time. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is not destruction, but becoming everything they said you couldn't be. If Jasmine's story moved you, if you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or underestimated, then this channel is for you. Subscribe to Athena Stories for more emotional, powerful journeys like this one. Leave a comment below, share your voice because your story matters too. And remember, sometimes the most powerful endings begin with just one step, like subscribe, and never let anyone rewrite your worth.